Hello, hello, hello. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. Khushamdi. Ji ayanu. Goeiemorgen.
Pakhair agale, ni hao, chune shumme, washmale, Ohio gonzaimes, guten morgen, hola, boyor, privyet, kaifahal, hale shama chutore, ahlan wasalan marhaba, kaifahal, and a very amazing good morning to everybody who's tuned into PTV1 and are watching World this morning alongside the very amazing, the very talented Shiza Hashmi and Shazad Khan. Hello Shiza, how are you today?
Assalamu alaikum.
Islam, and yes,
I'm
obviously,
great.
so you're going to ask me how am
Yes,
I
how
today?
are you today?
Okay, so I'm perfect, and I'm very happy as well because of the fact that I think after ages and ages that we are doing a certain or a specific show which is going to be very helpful for all those parents who are out there, for all those parents to be, and for all those people who never gave importance to their language.
That is true. That is true. You sort of gave it away. But before we actually do, we don't have top stories for the hour because we have some amazing, amazing guests that we need to talk to for a very long time. But there's just one thing I need to talk about. I think we were discussing right before as well.
Yeah.
So there's this thing I came across on social media, especially on Facebook, that a lot of people, including women, men and women, they are pretending to be passed out on roads nearby, on probably highway, Kashmir Highway, Islamabad Highway, and they expect you to stop and help them because that is what Pakistani people are good at doing, right? Helping everyone. But when you do, they will either rob you or they will either try to kidnap you or whatever. So be careful in who you're trying to, or you choose to help, because it's not safe anymore. And I have a lot of examples or people who actually told me that this happened to them recently. So just a message out there, be careful.
Just be careful. But Shiza, I think that there's a problem with this entire public service message, and that is that when we are on television, we definitely have to be very responsible about what we say.
Okay.
But as a matter of fact, now imagine that, God forbid, if there's somebody passed out and he or she was actually suffering from a problem.
I know.
So what will happen is that people who've actually heard this message or know that this is how they need to behave.
In who you choose to help.
Yes, exactly. So please, so this is something where it is hard to differentiate in between a person who's actually just acting or probably has got wrong intentions. So yeah, just from a distance, I think judge. Please judge first, and then if you're willing to help, do that too as well. But other than that, there are these random photos which we can see on Facebook and every other social media platform that in E11 specifically, and they've been saying it again and again, that people are robbing. What they do is that they actually throw eggs on your windshield, and the very moment you try to swipe the windshield and you want to clean it, so what happens is that it's egg all over your screen and you cannot literally see or what's happening around. So what happens is that you stop and you get out of the car. Please don't do that. Always stay in the car, remain inside, call somebody for help, and we just want you guys to be safe.
It's happened to my dad on motorway as well.
Really?
Yeah, but he didn't stop because we sort of shade these things in our family group, so everyone is sort of aware of that. So be careful, and we really hope you don't come across the wrong people.
Exactly. So now coming down to what are we talking about today? So talking about language, ladies and gentlemen, as I earlier mentioned when I started, or when we opened the show as well, that language is an intrinsic expression of culture.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, what happens is that we confuse ourselves into, now what happens is that, for example, all this time when we were going to school, I still remember Baba Black Sheep or Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, all of these poems, and I think that the syllabi hasn't changed in so many years. So my daughter still goes to the school, reads the same poems too as well.
Yeah.
But as a matter of fact, what do we learn from these poems? Why do they even teach us poems?
You know what? That is the perfect question that we need to ask today. And since you are talking about jingles and everything, so when I was studying PR and advertisement, this is something scientifically proven as well. Something that stays in your mind for so long is actually jingles. Especially when you've seen ads as well in TVs. So I don't want to name it, but you've heard this. 11, 12, 4, 4,
Yeah, I was about to say that.
It stays in your mind, right? So this is one of the things to sort of imprint what you've studied for a very long time in your mind. And I do remember, yes, Baba Black Sheep and all McDonald's and everything.
All right, so if you remember that, would you mind sharing that with people who are out there as well?
You want me to sing it?
I mean, don't sing it. It's a jingle, right? You just said that it's a jingle. Obviously, you'll have to sing it just the way you did.
What?
Four, all of that. So go ahead. Which one do you remember?
I remember a lot of them, actually.
Okay, so one of them.
I'm not going to, this is going to be sort of a dramatic reading of the poem. So, Itsy Bitsy spider went up the water slide. Down came the rain, and Vibe the spider? Okay, you know what? I don't
It's
actually
perfectly all right.
remember.
For somebody who's actually enrolled into a master's degree program and is actually sharing poems early in the morning on television, it's just hilarious for me. But it's perfectly all right.
Yeah, since we are talking about poems, so this is sort of a part of literature for so long, even thousands of years before Christ, you know.
Exactly.
And they're different sort of poems, but it actually became very popular in the Victorian era and afterwards as well, in different languages, everything. And it's sort of an expression. We always talk about music being as you know, form of expression. We talk about acting being a form of expression. This, I feel like, is a form of your emotional expression specifically.
Yes,
and if you are a writer or a poet, I feel like you have the ability to sense and feel emotions on a different level than usual people do. And I think it's an art. It's a blessing.
Okay, that's true partially, and that's not true partially too as well. Because what happens is that, you know, with poets, obviously, you know, they can express in a different way, but they cannot be very
comprehensive enough.
They cannot be very descriptive about the emotion too as well. And you know, so for everybody who's actually reading a poem, they need to have this sense of where the poet's actually trying to take them or what he or she is trying to convey them. For example, I think the best poetry piece from Allama Iqbal, when Junoon turned it into a song, everybody remembers it. But I haven't heard a single jingle of Iqbal's poetry. So imagine that if we want to give them or if we want to share with them these pieces of literature, I think what we need to do is that we need to adopt new systems of teaching too as well. How can we do that? This is something which we're going to ask our amazing guests who are with us right now, ladies and gentlemen.
But before that, very quickly, Shahzad, I know that you write songs and you write rap songs as well.
It's not going to come on to me, I'm telling you that today.
So can you like very quickly share a few lines with us that you wrote? Because it's a form of poetry as well.
I can certainly do that, but you know, since my mobile phone is on 2% battery and I have to find out where my poetry is. So probably, you know, after the break, I'm going to share a few verses which I've written too as well. So on my right-hand side, ladies and gentlemen, for the very first time when I actually joined PTV World, it was like 5 years ago. So this amazing lady, she's been a mentor to a lot of people over here within the same channel as well, and other than the channel too as well. She's been writing context books. She's written 2 poetry books too as well. So whenever you have any kind of difficulty in pronouncing a word, I think the first name which comes to our head is none other than Miss Shabnam Riaz. Hello, assalamu alaikum, ma'am. Thank you very much for joining us. She's a writer, she's a host, she's a poetess, she's an amazing mother.
And she has 3 published
And she's
books.
an amazing colleague too as well. Hello, assalamu alaikum, how are you?
Walaikum salam. Thank you so much for such a lovely and generous introduction. And it's lovely being here. I love the energy that you both share on the show and the way you've started, because mornings are about,
supposed to be energetic, right?
you know, getting back into the day, and the way you've done it, it's wonderful.
Thank
and
you,
it's also another thing, it's lovely being on this side of the sofa.
That is what I was going to ask. And is it, like, how do you feel waking up early in the morning and coming to a show?
Well, they're 2 different things. Waking up early in the morning and then coming to the show. Coming to the show was great. Waking up early in the morning was a bit of a challenge.
All right, so without any further ado, moving ahead, Shahzad, would you mind?
Yes, and next to her, we have a writer as well. She has actually translated Iqbal's poetry into English for youngsters like me, Shahzad, and you as well, because we generally do not...
Thank you for calling me young. Thank you.
You are. I'll be honest, we do not indulge a lot in Urdu poetry, which we are wrong at our part. I do agree with that. So it's best of her to actually translate some great work into English. She's none other than Miss Shireen Gheba. Thank you so much for being here. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
Did I mispronounce your name?
Yeah, the name is correct. Shireen Gheba, actually.
Okay, Gheba. Okay,
but let me just add that it's not my translation. I have just published it.
Modified.
It's Hadi Hussein's translation. And I can imagine that what kind of difficult task that would have been. And Iqbal's work. So it gives you the jitters.
Amazing that is. And alongside Miss Shireen, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be joined with somebody who's been a very regular on the show too as well. She's an educationist. She's a blogger. She's a writer. She's none other than Miss Sana Zafar. Hello, assalamu alaikum. How are you?
I'm fine. Walaikum salam. How are you all?
Absolutely perfect. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And you know, ladies and gentlemen, just right before going on air, we were just discussing over here in the studios that, you know, camera puts like 28% of extra fat on us too as well. So, you know, for all those people who think that, you know, I'm probably fat or I'm big enough, just minus that 28% and I'll be absolutely perfect.
Well, not for me though, but anyway. So yes, I think we need to start a conversation since we have poets and writers as well, educationists as well. We need to start with what motivated you or what inspired you to be a writer, starting with Ms. Shabnam.
Okay, because we're talking about poetry, you know, I'll start with the sort of examination of what is poetry and why is it important to us.
That's
Well,
nice.
because poetry is a refining of the senses.
Okay.
So many things are happening. Daily basis, our feelings, nature, things around you, current affairs, everything does, you know, it does affect you. So you have all these feelings, and then people, the poets, what they've done actually is they've put all these emotions into one sort of a form. It's a literary, you know, it's a literary expression. It employs various devices, and that's what makes it timeless. That's what makes it stay with you. As you know, spoke in your introduction about those jingles, those nursery rhymes that we've learnt at very, very young ages, and they've stayed with us, you know, throughout so many years. That's because they have a magic to it. What is that magic? You know, if you explore that, take this sentence, "It was raining." Okay, somebody says to you, "It was raining," or writes it down. You're never going to remember that.
Right.
Somebody says, "The skies opened, the cloud cried, and kissed the morning grass."
How poetic is that?
It's the same
right?
thing. Okay?
Got it.
So that's how that stays with you. That is the importance and the value and, you know, the sort of effect that poetry has on you.
Okay.
It's a medium of expression. So it's an art as well. And for me, my inspiration was when I was 7 years old, till 7 years old, I was an only child.
Okay.
And my brother was born when I was 7. And I was just so ecstatic and so happy that I didn't know what to do with those emotions.
right.
I found myself writing a poem.
Oh, at 7 years old?
At 7
Wow.
years old, My Baby Brother. That was the title. That's all I can remember.
That's
And so my parents were more excited than me.
Wow.
And they sent my, I was in England at that time, they sent my poem to a girls' magazine at that time. And they published it as a star letter. And that was my first publication at 7. And I also got £5.
Oh, wow, that is amazing.
That was,
But that's
that
great
was
for
the start.
motivation as well, right? It's sort of,
Exactly.
you know, push you into a direction that you need to be a writer. We need you.
Yeah.
Coming back to you, Miss Shireen, what is poetry? Okay, you're a writer more than you're a poet. What does this mean to you? Is this actually a form of expression for you, and what inspired you to be one?
Definitely, definitely. Basically, I was an artist, and I never ever thought I could be a writer.
Okay.
But certain things happened, like there was this fall of Kuwait and all that, and we had lived in Kuwait.
Okay.
And it just happened that people said, "Oh, so what if people have gone into Kuwait, and so what, you know?" So I was very upset, and I said, tomorrow somebody walks into Pakistan and says, "So what? It's a small country, so what? What is this? Nobody has a right to, you know."
Right.
So I was just emotionally very charged up, and I didn't know how to express it. And so I thought I had to write, and I wrote about life in Kuwait and what kind of a life it was.
Okay.
So it was actually, something happened in my life which, I became a writer by accident.
Okay, okay.
So by accident, I have always written a diary since the age of 13.
Okay.
Maybe that helped.
Probably did.
So I was into writing, but never publicly.
Okay.
And so I wrote this article and I sent it to Dawn, which was the topmost newspaper in the country. And I assumed that there's no question of it ever getting printed, because I've never written.
Okay.
And there it was suddenly a huge, you
Wow.
know, it went into a 2-week thing because it was so long. I had no idea that there is a, you know, restriction of words.
Okay.
So then they asked me to start writing for them regularly.
Okay.
And then there was no looking back.
Wow.
So for 25 years I've been writing.
Wow.
Wow, love
So it just happens. I've always chosen to be a freelance writer,
Right.
because it keeps me free. And when I'm writing, I'm just, I don't make any restrictions on myself. Then after it's complete, then I would choose which newspaper or magazine I would
Well,
offer
that's
it
perfect.
to.
You're writing on your own terms.
Yeah.
You must enjoy doing it.
That is great, but there is a different side to it too as well. I'm very sorry that you know I wanted to share one of my own experiences. So my wife happens to be a writer too as well, and she's very good with words. So whenever we have to argue, you know, I think the best medium she chooses is to text message me, and they're long enough that I cannot even read it. So whenever, for example, that you know I'll tell her, okay, probably we can talk together. And then she's like, no, you know what? I'm good with words, so I'm just going to write you text messages. So I'm like, you know, so it's different. So does that happen to you too quite a lot of times? Because, you know, people who are writers are good in expressing when they write, other than when they talk. Is that correct?
Well, I think I can talk also. So everybody has a big disadvantage both ways.
Okay, that's amazing. Miss
Nobody's-
Sana, what about you?
Now, Ms. Sana, is sort of a different question for you. You are a blogger, which means you're a writer as well. But you, more than that, you're an educationist. You're imparting knowledge to people, and you're making them understand what writings or what poems actually mean. So they must mean something to you as well. What do they?
It's like, you know, poetry is a form of an expression for us, all right? I'm seconding Shabnam and ma'am, whatever they have said. So teaching children poetry is a very, very tricky thing. And the syllabus that we follow here these days, poetry is completely out of it.
Okay.
And they don't really encourage teaching poetry. It's just few of, if the time is left, they say, okay, let's teach two poems, like in a term or in a two. That doesn't teach them anything. That doesn't teach them anything about rhyme, because children get attracted to rhyme and rhythm quickly rather than just indulging themselves into any piece of writing. Like you talked about small jingles that we say, and that remains in our mind. So for me, poetry is really important because it gives them the freedom of expression. They find their own character, probably what they're going through, within those lines or verses of the poet. And they try to connect themselves rather than going in the novel and reading and getting into boring long descriptions. Poetry is quick, short, and it gets into your mind and it settles there and it touches your heart.
Okay.
So, and I think students should be exposed more to it.
Well, that makes perfect sense.
Exactly.
But you know what I've heard, we were talking about it just, I think, when we started the show as well, that writers are usually more sensitive or emotional than usual people are.
Artists.
Is it true? Artists, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Exactly.
artists. Is it true, first of all? And second, is there any piece of writing or piece of poetry that actually made you cry?
Oh, all the time.
Really?
Yes,
All the
Can you share
time.
one
Yes.
with us?
No, that's a
Maybe you
difficult
don't want to make her cry today. No, probably something else, which makes you
share the
happy.
experience
It's
with
not
us.
just poetry, Shila.
Okay,
It's not just poetry. It can be a documentary.
True.
It can be, you know, a scene of a film.
Yeah.
It's sort of a catharsis.
It can be just an expression in somebody's eyes. You go outside. There's so many things you can see. You can, you know, you can see street children. So many things are affecting you. People
Right,
who
right.
are, you know, who are less privileged than we are. Many things. An animal in trouble. That will
Right.
touch you. It'll you know, it'll make you. It'll evoke emotions. So as you said, not just poets, but
Artists.
as Shazad also said as well, artists. Creativity is something that, you know, it employs those emotions at work. It makes you, it causes a turmoil.
Right.
A turmoil happens inside. Something happens, you don't know what it is, and you are restless. And then you come to that phase of creativity, whatever it may be. It may be a poem, it may be writing, it may be music, it may be dance, it
Right.
may be ballet, it may be anything.
anything.
But those emotions then come forward, and then they come into a creative sort of a product, and that's how it works.
Well, that's beautifully said, I have to say. Also, your voice is so soothing, it seems like you're saying poetry when you're talking to us. But ladies and gentlemen, there's just one thing. This is a question to all of you, actually. There are some writers I know who naturally go on a writing halt. I mean, there's sometimes you're not probably inspired by something, and it's a break for you. It's sort of a hiatus for probably months or years. So there's a term called literary pilgrimage. You travel to places for inspiration. Did you ever travel to places for inspiration, and did you ever go to a literary halt?
Many times you're doing this subconsciously.
Okay.
Many times it's not something you set out to
Well,
do.
I'm sorry that I have to pause you over here, but we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. We just have to rush out for a short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Good
tuned.
morning. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for everybody who just got tuned into PT World. You watching World this morning alongside Shiza Hashmi and Shazad Khan. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are very lucky that we have actually been joined by people who are actually writers, who are poetesses, and they're very inspiring in terms because, you know, that the way they write makes you feel as if that this was something which you were never ever able to express, and wow, they have done it so fabulously. But before going towards the break, Shiza actually posed a question, and the question was that, you know, in life what happens is that at times, you know, we do not get the same amount of energy which we have or which we possess every day. There are lows, there are ups, there are highs, there is downs, and whatnot. And same is the case which happened with Tiger Woods too as well, because I believe that people who are sportsmen, sportswomen, or people who are artisans, people who, you know, people who just work differently, who just function differently, all are artists to me. So what happened with him is everybody knew that at the age of 3, he won his first ever trophy in golf. And obviously that might have been an adolescent competition. But other than that, we knew that, you know, he was a great sportsman, but he got involved into controversies. And then there was a pause in his life where he wasn't really playing golf and he was just trying to sort his life out. But in 2016, then there was another scandal which came out. But now at the age of 43, he once again won an open tournament championship as well. And which means that, you know, it doesn't really matter what happens, but there are different phases of life, and your writing can be different as a writer in those different phases. So does that happen to you a lot?
Absolutely, it happens. As you said, you know, not just the creative people, sports people, people who have, you know, when you are involved in some sort of a performance or at the end of the day, a product that you are busy creating or busy, you know, making happen, you are going to have that burnout. And it's impossible to stay on the same plane and the same level. So you're going to have the ups and the downs. And so when you're on an up, that's when you should be humble and remember, you know, all that time and enjoy that moment. When you're on the down, you have to also realize that this is something that's part of nature, okay? And still at that time, be thankful for everything that you've achieved. Now, it's very, very common for people who are, you know, very, very creative because of the feelings involved and the sensitivity involved, for them to fall into sort of depressive states as well, when they're not producing something that they think is up to, you know, what they want to do, you know, as in writer's block or whatever medium of expression you have. Main thing is staying focused and understanding the reality behind it and, you know, giving yourself credit for what you do. So I think that is
exactly. And how do you think that media plays a role as well? God forbid, you know, we do have, because Pakistan, we have faced a lot of terrorism within our own country as well. So the entire nation goes through all of that, you know, stress and anxiety and problems, and you see that in news every day too as well. So how, as a writer, do you think that it will have an impact on you? Or do you think that writer needs to be bulletproof? I mean, ideas are always bulletproof, so.
Yes, in a way you've got to make yourself a little bulletproof, because you've got to keep, you know, dishing out. I mean, you've got to be productive through it all. And it's not that difficult in the sense because it's natural to you. Like you have food and you know, your normal life. So you've put your art or your writing into your normal life. When something, you know, big happens in your life or in around you, it's bound to affect you, and when it affects you, it affects your work. And that's how it should be. It would be very unnatural for me to be telling a fairy story when there is a big fat accident happening in front of me. So I've got to write about that also if it has. But what happens as a writer? I ask myself that has enough been written about it? Then there's really no need for me to add to the same stuff.
But there's a is there always a purpose to what you write?
Yes, definitely. It's got to be purpose. Like my father always, you know, like I was just an artist in the beginning. And he used to say, in Pakistan, we are an underdeveloped country. We can't afford this luxury of art for art's sake. This is too high a luxury. It's got to have a purpose. And I mean, why do I put it out there and if it makes no difference to the person who's reading it, you know, or who is seeing it? So it's got to give something to a person. It's a way of sharing a joy or a feeling or a point of view.
Thank you very much for saying that, which is why, you know, so Miss Hannah, now she said that, you know, it needs to give everybody a purpose. So all of those Jack and Jills and Baba Black Sheeps I've been studying in my school, and my daughter's still studying it, and you, I'm sure, might have studied it, and you, all of you. What was the purpose behind that?
The purpose, it was just to create rhythm and to attract kids and to make the whole, I mean, create happiness in students.
I think the learning process probably entertaining.
I mean,
or
if,
Yeah,
I'm, if I'm learning
entertainment.
something which is never ever going to be useful for me in my life, why am I even learning it?
Why did you learn algebra? You never used it, I'm pretty
No,
sure.
I've used it
You
in my exams.
only
All
place.
of them.
to wait to
No,
get
but I
this
think
right.
this is something which we need to ask.
Yeah, but what happens is because children love harmony and melody and music, and they love to, at that time as well, what you're doing to them is you're instilling the use of language. And so what they're learning is vocabulary, they're learning rhythm, they're learning the application of language, be it a simple nursery rhyme. But many nursery rhymes have a theme behind them, a symbolism behind them as well. If you remember Ring a Ring of Roses,
Yeah.
that has a pretty dark symbolism behind it, by
it
the
does.
way.
Yeah, the words
it
are
was
really
We used to play
yeah,
the game,
it was it was
For me,
something
it
to
was
do.
game.
It was something to do with the plague, I think. I'm not really sure because because one of the symptoms of the plague was the sneezing. So do you remember the achoo achoo?
Yeah,
We
yeah,
all
yeah.
fall down.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
okay, so some nursery rhymes have a bit of a sort of symbolic
Subliminal meaning, yes.
dark thing before there. Okay, something that I thought was really interesting, the question that you asked, that is there always a purpose to writing? And of course, Shiri and Sana as well, when they're writing, there is a purpose to it. Sometimes when you're a poet, you really don't know what you're writing. Okay, you write something. Many times it's happened to me. I've written something, and somebody asks me what inspired you, and I say I don't know. It just came out, and I don't know why I wrote it. And then they come along with all these inferences. Oh, this meant this, and this meant this, and I'm thinking, okay, really?
Maybe, if you say
But
so.
there's this problem with that too as well. For example, so if I have a few writings and I wanted to share it with people, and once I'll share it, I don't know why, by the end of the conversation, they're like very judgmental. They're like, are you suffering from these all
sad?
these things in
That's
your life?
that's why it's very brave
So how do you,
to be a writer.
yeah.
Because people are going to examine your thoughts. What are you doing? You're taking your insights and you're turning them out.
So then don't you think that we should actually rather be teaching our kids that Alia and Ali went up the hill and something of that sort,
Definitely.
which is
I love that
which
thought.
is very you know, according to our culture too.
Yes,
So
exactly.
when is that going to happen over here in Pakistan?
That is very, very important. We need to be mindful about it. When we are mindful about it, then we are going to start producing nursery rhymes that are homegrown. And for that, I don't just mean English. English, Urdu, regional languages. And the English is important. Why? Because our children who are going to the English medium schools, they also, this is ironic that, they're being exposed to so much of a Western sort of, thing, that they need to be also told that, hey, Ali and, as you said, Alina went up the hill as well.
But you know what? I feel like, Ms. Shabnam, you have actually played a part or a role in this. You have 3 books published, and one of them is actually being used in a school curriculum for grade 1, I think.
It's a textbook, yes.
It's a textbook, yes. And one of the rhymes that she has written for kids, I have them with me. It's poems by Shabnam Riaz, Twinkling Tunes. And I feel like that, the sense of responsibility that you felt, that our children need to study something that is homegrown.
Go ahead, Shazza, read us one.
I am going to. I actually picked one out, and if I manage to open it, okay. What boys say. Girls are silly, they make such a fuss. Why can't they be just like us?
Wow, that's true.
They can't climb trees or dirty get. When it rains, they scream, oh, we're going to get wet. Things like these, we need to, learn and teach to our children as well. Ma'am, first of all, I need you to read one of these or any of your poems.
Okay.
And then tell us about why did you actually feel like putting this out to everyone?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, the thing is, Shazza, again, there was a need. I felt that there was this void, that we needed our children, again, to, come back to something that's at home. My daughter actually illustrated these poems, so there's pictures of a mother in shalwar kameez as well. Okay. So I thought that was very important. And one of the things that I thought, if we talk about the things that our children will relate to, this is one of my poems, and it's because of my school bag.
Okay.
Right? So children in the West won't understand this, but our children will.
They do, right.
So the poem is, the seasons change and life goes on, and though I know I'm getting older, it seems to me that short I'll stay because of the school bag on my shoulder. My bag defies all Newton's laws, and it amazed my teacher when I told her that a tornado could not blow me away because of the school bag on my shoulder. In just a few years, I'm going to look old, and I'll stoop and gasp while just carrying a folder. But I'll tell everyone, hey, I just look this way, because of the school bag that was on my shoulder.
Wow.
So, ma'am,
Very
you know what
powerful.
I picked out or got away from this is there's a cultural relevance, and this is what we talked about as well. So whenever we're exposed to English poems or poems from the West and Western writers, I feel like we learn them because we have to. But the things that you just read out, there's a cultural relevance, as you said, this, you know, children from America or let's say from the West do not relate to this because they don't have school bags or anything, they just go to their classes.
Our children
So
need a
it's-
voice.
They've got lockers at their schools, so they put their school
there's
bags
a different
over
school
there.
system, right? So there's definitely a need of the hour to produce our own content and, you know, give it to the children. Coming to you, Ms. Shireen, since you have translated and sort of modified translation of Iqbal's poetry, what and when did you feel there was a need? Let's start with that.
I think there was, I've been teaching for 25 years and I frankly am myself a product of the same education.
Right.
So I also didn't understand Iqbal. And at home, my father used to be all, you know, crazy about Iqbal, and it would frankly go over my head.
Right.
So when I saw this translation, I was thrilled, and I was at least able to get a little understanding of it. So I used to always tell my students later on that, like, if a parent finds a treasure, what do they do with it? They want to share it with their children.
I think they'll keep it till the time, you know, their daughter's about to get
married.
I'm sorry.
I think we've got grown out of that time. We're just dying to share it with them. So I found this treasure and I just couldn't, you know. So I wanted to share it with my children and my students. And when I was ready to share it, I knew them very well, and I knew they wouldn't be ready to share it in this shape. So this is why I've spent so many years.
So now you've got millions of students out there.
Yeah.
And please share a few couplets from the book.
Yes, I have.
And that'll be very good of you.
That would be great.
Yeah, can you
This
please
is
read one
a
out?
book by, I would love to read out. I'll read out a little portion. This is from Allama Iqbal, and I painted it, and, you know, I tried to make it. And then I had, you see, just before publishing, I had a test audience session.
And you
with
also
a
published
few.
this yourself, didn't
Yeah,
you?
I published it myself.
Wow.
Yes.
We're just sharing the title of the book with the viewers too as well.
Yes.
So if you can bring it, yeah.
And these are your paintings.
This is my
yeah?
painting, and I'm now working on the sequel, you know, a sequel of this book.
Yeah, and all of these are your paintings too.
These
as
are
well.
all my
So
paintings,
so
yes.
you
He's an
read
artist.
so you read a piece, and then you painted a piece.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, beautiful.
So let's listen to it. Too.
It's very natural because when you read something, a vision comes in your eye.
Yeah.
It just happens, and when what you see, you are copying what you've seen. You know, so this is really important. Like, if you seek knowledge, then be of two minds. Increase your doubt, decrease your certainty. If you seek action, doubt less, be more sure. Be of one mind, one personality. This is so powerful. you
Very
know?
powerful.
It is
Because
indeed.
when the time for action comes, we are confused. Oh, should I do this? Should I do it? Oh, for God's sake, choose one and
Do
get
it
it and
already,
done.
right?
Yeah.
And that comes from
You
confidence.
know, it's something that helps you every time.
And it's one of Qaid-e-Azam's core too as well,
Yes.
ladies and gentlemen, that he takes a decision and then makes it right. So please make sure that you know that whenever you take a decision, it is not supposedly, it does not really need to be right in the first place.
Yeah.
You can make it right later on.
But moving on to Miss Sana, do you have
Yeah,
a question?
okay, it's perfectly
Okay,
all
moving on
right.
to Miss Sana. Since you're a teacher, and you know, you have to tell me first of all if you agree with all the things that we just talked about.
I totally
And
agree.
second, does this ever happen to you that you know, parents from your students come to you and tell you that, Miss Sana, I want my children to learn or, you know, read Urdu or regional languages more than they do in English? Does this ever happen to you? Or do you personally feel like there's a need for you to teach them regional languages more than you teach them English?
You see, yes, there are parents who have come, obviously, because we are more open towards this Western society and English taking over and everything, and they're preparing them at the end of the day for the O-levels exam and
Right,
everything.
right.
So English has just
global
taken over in
education
every
system.
way. All right. But yes, there are students and there are parents who have come from abroad, and they're really keen that their children, they learn Urdu, you know, and so we have two levels there. One is the difficult Urdu that we learn throughout, all right, and one is the easy Urdu. So we have easy Urdu students who take it slow, but the parents are more concerned that yes, by the end of the day, I want my child to at least read the newspaper or at least write letter. you know, if the need arises. So it's just sad that now I think parents are becoming aware and they want a balance of both English and Urdu.
Definitely.
And yes, there are teachers, obviously, you know, that when we teach English, there is a certain part in the syllabus which is called translation. So yes, we even translate those English lines into Urdu. They're asked to translate that, even their phrases and proverbs and idioms and everything, and then the other way around too. So yes, it's there should be a balance, and I think it's really important that.
But other than that, you know, it will sound very different. For example, if you know Jack and Jill would have been in a regional language, you know, Jack and Jill chad gaye pahadi te rud gaya Jack. I mean things like
That
these.
still sounds
Children
good.
would love
Yeah,
it.
it does.
They would love it.
But now the only problem is that I think that people who produce all of this content are not producing it in regional languages. I think that's one thing which we need to cater to. So do you think in days to come, for example, I don't know, if you're a Punjabi, you'll certainly be writing a book in Punjabi?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're talking about, you see. How are we letting our languages go so easily?
Yeah.
Why? Why are we not fierce in protecting them? If we, as our generation, if we are not instilling that love for our regional language with our children, so our next generation has lost that. What are they going to teach their children? We are custodians of our heritage, of our culture, and we should be proud of it. We should be promoting it. I mean, if we can have, you know, people who can come from abroad and come to Pakistan and look at all the heritage and cultural treasures that we have, and they're ooh and eyeing, and we're looking at them and thinking, hey, I didn't notice that before.
Right.
That's our.
And that
you know,
happens a lot, you
Yeah,
know.
and that's our mistake.
So how do we
have to
change the
own up to
mindsets
it.
of the people within the urban areas? Because the parents would never ever want their kids to speak in Punjabi, Sindhi,
Well, that's
Pashto,
wrong.
or in any
Yeah.
other language in front of, you know,
Be
guests
proud.
probably.
Be proud of
Yeah,
your,
so
of
how
your
do,
culture.
So how do we change the mindset? I think it's because it's not the kids' problem.
Yeah.
It's not that they're doing something wrong. I think it's the parents who are not actually letting them learn all of those things.
Because the parents are not being mindful.
Yeah.
You see, it's okay. Every parent wants the best for their child. They're spending lots and lots of money putting them in good educational institutions, taking money for their tuitions and higher education and everything else. But what we've got to understand is, while you're giving them all that education, are they really being educated? And that's what you've got to do. And the only way they're going to be educated is if you're going to think out of the box and you're going to think about what you are thinking and think about what they are thinking. So I think that's important.
Ms. Siri, what's your take on this?
How many minutes do I have?
I mean, as many as you want. Go ahead.
Well, let me just start from one point which you have been repeating, was the purpose of the jingles. I interviewed Hugh Catchpole, who was a very well-known and renowned educationist in this region.
Okay.
He established the Hassan Abdal School.
Oh, wow.
And the Aptabad Public School, also the Sargodha Cadet College.
Oh, wow, okay.
So he was a great educationist. And I asked him the same question, and I asked him about rote memory. He said rote memory has its own value, and I think jingles falls into that.
Okay.
Rote memory is needed when you have to learn formulas in algebra or anything in maths or through your education. There are points where you have to remember a quotation of somebody. So jingles is the first step to all that learning, which will be needed later on. And let's not forget the fact that through that little jingle, that little child of 3 or 4 is having the confidence to stand in front of other people and speaking.
Exactly.
And he is remembering those words, and he's able to repeat them every time he's asked, and he's, you know, just repeats it. So I think we have to value it for its thing. The second point is that, like you were saying about the local languages, a lot of work has been done, especially by the folk heritage. Aksi Mufti is I think he's a pride.
He's been on the show too as
he's
well.
a great pride for all of us. He has done a great deal of work. And I remember as a kid, there was this maid of mine, and she used to tell me a story, and in that story, I don't remember that story very much, there was some lamb in it or something. She was a Punjabi, and she would say, the first line, if you allow me to, I still remember it.
Please go
Chal dhamma dukni dhakna do, pit sai lela, pit sai lela te pit sai tu. So it used to tickle me like anything, and I used to laugh, and you know, I used to love it. I still remember it. hardly understand what it was
Right,
about.
right.
But you see the value of it.
It's the power of the
So
symbols.
it's
Very
how
brilliant.
we react as parents. If we are going to value it, the child will value it also. And if we are going to put it down,
Right.
So one last thing very quickly, Ms. Sana, and that is that do you think that in days to come, or probably within the schools when teachers, they sit together and they think that, okay, this is the curriculum will be, for kids who are actually going to come into the new year, do you think ever any teacher stood up and said that, what about regional languages? Because we want the teacher fraternity to actually think about it. I mean, we can only speak Punjabi in our houses or probably give them books to read. But by the end of the day, I think it's the schooling system or the education system, and they need to be inclusive about all our
Refined,
regional
yes.
languages.
Yes, I think teachers should speak up and they should include these regional languages there in the curriculum because it'll give them a boost. They will think from different angles, from different perspectives. They'll be keen to even learn about different regions and what do they have to offer. And probably they can embed it in their writing by at times using different vocabulary words in the sentences apart from English. Like, when English writers are writing, they use French word or they use any Persian word. So plus, yes, they'll be exposed to it, exposed to other regional languages and other, these mindsets.
And it's also
too.
healthy for their minds to be exposed to different things, right?
Yes, definitely. They should be exposed. And yes, teachers, I think in the coming few years, they will eventually, or the owners and the principal, the stakeholders, they will actually stand up at the end of the day. And
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being with us. It was lovely to have you guys on the show.
It was a pleasure.
And this was for the very first time that we actually spoke about a topic which I think the teachers need to do it by themselves too as well. Keep on writing, keep on producing some amazing content, and we'll make sure that we borrow these books from you or buy from you.
We'll give them to you.
Inshallah, inshallah. So for all those people who are out there, please make sure that you write to us on our Facebook fan page, which is with the name of
Well This Morning.
on Twitter,
Well This Morning without a G.
on Daily Motion
Well
and
This
YouTube.
Morning, Well This Morning.
The fabulous is going to be at
11:05 in the night.
till the next time. 1, 2, 3. Good
Good morning.
morning.